Is it officially summer yet, or is that coming up?
Yes.
21st, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Then the days get shorter after that.
I
So,
believe that. Okay. All right, I'm starting the webinar. We are live streaming and we are all set to go.
Good morning, everyone. Today it's June 16th, and this is the meeting of the Northborough Design Review Committee. This meeting is being held hybrid, some people in person, some people are on Zoom. And I don't have to take roll call votes anymore to start the meeting, I don't think.
I think you do when there's Zoom, isn't there? When it's Zoom, I think you do?
Use remote.
Yeah, because you just,
But the
Just
planning
that-
board meetings we're all Zoom. As long as we can hear everybody, they said it's okay. Yeah, so I think we'll just go, we can hear everybody. But I will have to take roll call votes roll call for votes. But I think as long as we can hear everybody, then we're set to go.
okay.
Okay, first on the agenda is the continued discussion of parking requirements. I'm gonna leave it to Mark.
Okay. So my goal here was to try to take all of the parking requirement bylaws and put them onto one chart. So that people can find them all in one place and maybe attach this to the end of our guidelines. So I have fresh eyes on these, learning them for the first time, so I was basically going through them all, cutting and pasting them into the sheet. I flagged a few items that didn't make sense to me, so if they don't make sense to me, maybe they won't make sense to other people that don't deal with this all the time. It's really not that much. If we want to go through, the first section is on residential housing. Or I guess residential. The only couple of things I wondered whether assisted living facilities and nursing homes are not required to have any loading docks or anything like that, but maybe we want to throw a blurb in there just to say that they may be required at the discretion of the building inspector. Just so
What do you think about that, Bob? Do you like that?
No, it needs to go to the planning board.
Okay,
Needs to go to the special permit granting authority. I mean, you can have it in there as a recommendation,
Yeah,
but I can't force it. If it's written in the bylaw, that's fine. As, a certain threshold, then you need one. But at the discretion, I don't like giving it at the discretion,
okay,
to be honest with you.
all right.
I think that's up for a committee of 5 to hash that out.
So what I'll do, I'll take it off of here and you put it into the list for the planning board?
I can understand what you're saying, Mark, and I
Yeah.
think you're right. But I think in terms of the mechanics, I don't think the proper place is for me to make that.
Okay.
That's all.
so I don't know if I take it off, I just put it a little different wording,
Right.
like what Bob had said.
All right, so I just changed building inspector to the planning board?
I'm
saying,
saying,
hey.
Special permit granting is
Okay.
sometimes it's CBA.
Okay.
Okay, so leave it, and instead of building inspector, it will say SPGA.
and that's not to say that, the design review committee can't have input on that.
Yeah,
You can put that in with your letter that goes to the SPGA.
Odds are anything residential is not gonna come from what anything.
Well, assisted
Maybe it's-
living, nursing
Multi-
home, new construction would, new construction.
Duplexes do.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
you guys have more items than you think.
okay. So,
So everything else on here should be just the bylaw and me cutting and pasting what it said. I can paraphrase it a bit. So if anybody, please, this is just gonna be a guideline thing, so I don't think I have to have the wording exactly. If anybody, if something looks wrong, double check it for me.
So you're in red here, over 5,000 square feet. So you're just referencing the section where the loading dock requirements are.
Right.
Is that what that is?
Right.
Under commercial,
Oh, okay.
under restaurant,
Yes.
bar.
Yes, because the loading dock requirements are listed under separate bylaws. I was worried that people might get blindsided by that, by seeing that they met the parking requirements for a restaurant. in this case. But didn't have a loading dock, or didn't plan on a loading dock, and then, you know, of course. They get caught with that later, but I was just trying to add that to this section, kind of as a reference that. It appears elsewhere. And that's the bylaw is, there's a link to it right there where it says exactly, you know, what it is. It's also at the end of this chart.
No, that's a good idea.
And that's really what the bulk of the changes on commercial are, it's just adding the loading dock requirements and sending a reference to it.
So it's a check, it's like what goes along with the check sheet, so someone
Yeah.
would be able to go down the check sheet.
I think that's a good idea.
Just as a, for background, when you refer to loading dock. Are you referring to like ground level, so the trailer goes seamlessly into a floor area? So you have to dig out part of the land to make a ramp?
Oh, no.
Or,
Yeah.
or like if it's a restaurant and they're retrofitting a restaurant. You know, is it, you know, a space for the truck to pull in
Yeah,
and then they lower everything to the ground?
and there are definitions for a loading bay, which also include maneuvering space.
Right.
And it's not specified in the bylaws what it means, so.
Well, this says off-street loading spaces. So this reference that you have is for spaces. So that's just the striping. So maybe we should change that instead of saying loading docks and loading spaces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's for them to park and then bring the materials in.
yeah, typically when it's a loading dock,
Yeah.
it's a full level from the trailer to the warehouse or the building. You know, that would be a dock or loading space. If a truck comes in with a lift gate, you know, takes the material to the ground and they can wheel it in the building at ground level.
Right, so we should change everywhere it says dock to space. Cause it's all reference.
Probably on commercial, but industrial isn't all industrial on that kind of a high
Yeah.
loading dock?
All those same notes apply there, but it doesn't specify that they're different.
I mean, just about every industrial building that I can think of has docks in it, you know,
Yeah.
a trailer flow level. I'm
Right,
trying to think of some that don't, I'm sure there are.
Well, under the industrial one, it says. An area of at least 400 square feet of appropriate dimensions exclusive of drives and maneuvering space shall be considered one off-street loading bay. One such bay shall be provided for each loading door. So that's
So maybe that one.
not really a
Bay,
space, that's a bay.
say bay, and then that does have a definition. Yeah. The same arrow?
Uh,
It's number 2 instead of number 1.
it's E3.
Okay.
What page you on, Laurie, in the book?
7-100.
Something like a supermarket, they always have a loading dock too, right?
Mm-hmm.
and this is for all, correct, like all different commercial and,
Well, there's one section here on commercial, and then there's a section at the very end, which is industrial.
okay.
Or the next section is industrial.
You could break, you could head that on the beginning of each one, commercial and industrial.
Do you mind making the updates and sending it back?
No, so I'm doing under industrial, changing that to a loading bay,
Okay,
that. But then
Under
I should
number
add the
2.
definition, yeah,
Under number 2, it says, office buildings, research facilities, and similar uses have berths. One berth for each 8,000,
Berth.
20,000. An additional berth for each 40,000.
Train?
I should see if they're like,
should we change the words into this?
yeah, this.
Is there a definition for birth?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for,
More boaty.
and there is not.
Yeah, berth is for ships, right? Ships are trains.
No.
Ships and trains, yes.
So should we update that, like as a bylaw update? Change birth to,
Well, it's, you may want to think about, what language you want to use. Is it a berth? Is it a loading space? Is it a loading dock? I mean, it's all kind of mentions the same idea.
Hmm.
But how do you solidify it so it fits under one definition,
Yeah,
you know?
if it's listed somewhere, in the definition section.
Goes, you know.
Yeah, if it isn't, then if it's not listed in the definitions, then isn't it just an easy change to go from that to space? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, we don't,
Yeah.
our definitions, we don't have, or,
Is
Right.
space even in a definition?
But I did look up online what birth meant. But, you know,
we don't even have loading.
Yeah, maybe we need to revisit this zoning.
the planning board thing.
Yeah, but if you can.
But, you know,
List.
yeah,
We can add some definitions.
okay. Then there are a couple. Okay, under restaurants and bars. I questioned whether that was a restaurant with a bar or a restaurant or a bar.
Yeah, I mean, it can be an and.
But the reason that prompted that was because later on, under industrial, we have Nano Brewery, Blue Pubs, microbrews, which I would call a bar, and they have a different parking requirement of one space per seat, 3 seats. Where this is one space per 4 seats.
So in the use table, they differentiate the like permitting as to whether it's a restaurant with a bar or serves alcohol versus doesn't serve alcohol. Because some of them are by right uses and some of them are special permit uses, so that's probably what the parking requirements are trying to capture. Is whether they're serving alcohol or not.
I think the increased parking demand for bars as opposed to restaurants is that sometimes when you go to a restaurant, you may have 2 or 3 people in a car. Whereas if you go into a bar, you might have a max of 2. You know, so just,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you know, I'm thinking of the restaurants I go to and the bars I. You know, usually if you go into a bar, everybody there, unless you're a couple, has their own vehicle. But you can pile 4 people or a family into a car and use one parking spot. So I think that's one of the differentiations in the parking demand between restaurants and bars. The tricky part is when it's both.
And we can see the breweries all get whacked lately. I mean, a lot of them, with never enough parking.
Yeah.
Should probably be 1 for 2.
So I just, you know, as far as, I mean, I kind of, these are under different sections, industrial, would have been nice to have them back to back, maybe we can do that by just noting commercial and, you know, in a separate column. And then put them back to back.
Yeah, I like that.
So what should I just not say either or just? say-
Well, you know, now that I'm looking at it, I think restaurant has that parking requirement regardless of whether they're serving alcohol or not.
Mhm.
And a bar may be part of a restaurant, but it may not be. So I see those as 2 different things.
Yeah, it lists bar, so restaurant with bar, maybe, you know, I should change that to it, or?
Well, I think the intent here is that it's the same parking requirement, whether they have a bar or not. So if it's Northborough House of Pizza. Obviously, they don't serve alcohol, this is the parking requirement. If it's you know, the Village, the tavern. Then it's the same exact parking requirement, so it doesn't matter whether they have a bar or not.
It's probably olden days how they said restaurant bar, probably could just say restaurant and,
Yeah, you just get rid of bar completely.
yeah, cause they're not, like bars nowadays are breweries and
Do we have any,
like just
or can you
bar.
think of any place that's strictly a bar that doesn't serve food? I mean, there's one in Grafton, but they serve potato chips.
Right,
But every other place I think of has some sort of a food service in addition to the bar, so I would call that a restaurant.
I don't know a few, but I can't think of any in Norfolk.
Right, well, and nobody's got the distillery.
Yeah. But there's also,
That's right.
there's also, how about that? But it's the old, it used to be the old time and now it's got a new name. It's on Canal Street.
Yeah,
I think that's just a bar, isn't it?
they
The
serve,
volleyball.
yeah, they serve food there.
Nothing in there, so we don't care. And then there's also the
St. Charles,
St. Charles thing, I think they serve appetizers, but not food.
right. Prepackaged stuff.
I think I'll just get rid of bar.
cause that's like the old time they used to have the bar arms.
Yeah, the only one I can remember is the old Dewdrop Inn.
Yeah,
Didn't they have food?
Did they have food? I don't think originally they did, but I didn't attend it, so I can't verify that. I just remember it was on the corner.
and then what was the plan? Before they did it all. Oh, boy. Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not listed in the use chart, it's an allowed use just to have a bar.
Right. So maybe just restaurant and then the other ones are breweries and distilleries.
yeah, I
I'd
like
say-
that idea. That sounds like a good idea. But even a brewery has food,
It says
so,
it's one of the bar.
right? But a brewery has food anyway, so it's an eating establishment.
Is it required in town that a brewery serve food?
No, it's something,
Even if
just a
it's a
food truck.
microbrewery and then they don't serve food.
Yeah, exhibit A doesn't serve food, they just.
So the one that wants to come to Northborough,
Mm-hmm.
they do not want to serve food,
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Where do they wanna be?
they want to do food trucks. For West Main.
Food trucks, so they would
Park.
probably have to have a dedicated spot for them.
It would take away from parking requirements anyway, so. I'd like to.
And you'd want it close, like those 9 spaces we're looking at, would probably take a whole food truck.
Next to the handicap spot.
You know.
You might
So-
need extra spaces for the overserved. Make sure you can get out of your space without hitting something.
Maybe we want to eliminate spaces, so then they'll walk.
If that's.
That's stagger.
Then you have people playing Frogger with the lights. After drinking. Okay, we digress.
Digress.
All right,
Alright, then the only other thing I noticed was we spelled theater. Like the British way instead of the English way.
so we're back to the bars and the theaters, the old days.
Yeah. Yeah.
These bylaws, I know a lot of them are probably pretty old from the original bylaws. They have,
57.
Oh, we don't have a theater anyway, but.
yeah, we can fix them.
And I don't know if this is a typo that I made or because it says. Screen, single screen and package screen have 1 seat per seats, and then it should be 1 space per seats. I think that's just a typo that I made. Oh, and if you're looking at the updated one, I already changed that, so.
Yeah, theater.
Then bowling alley was the same thing. It says bowling alley is, and it says 3 spaces per alley. Which is not a. You know,
Larry's probably
So I-
3 total.
well, I think, yeah, and maybe it's meant for them, but you know, it should be 3 spaces per lane, but that seems like a lot too, so. I don't wanna just change lane,
Because it's usually 1 family per lane.
yeah. I think 1 space per lane makes more sense, but that's a bylaw thing, so. Planning board.
Right. We can make a list of little changes to that.
But in these guidelines, I should, well, not that a bowling alley is gonna be opening.
They were
But
thinking about it,
yeah, well, actually, that might change hands, right? So,
and they were thinking about one up when they first did the Wegmans that. The where the pizza place is was originally gonna be a bowling alley.
Oh,
At
no
least-
kidding.
and they did one at Apex.
But do you think, I mean, I don't know if they would need 3 spaces per lane.
Well, if you got a bowling night,
Yeah,
my
if you
dad
have
was a
a
bowler, and there's 4 members on a team. And they're all bringing their own vehicles, because it's rare that sometimes they ride, but typically it's kind of like a bar, you know, if you get a gathering of people on bowling night, chances are it's gonna be 4 per team, so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we just.
So I don't mind, if it's just a typo, I don't mind changing it to 3 spaces per lane on the guideline. And you guys can do it on the planning board, but if it is changing the number of spaces, then that's just a planning board thing, I don't know what to do with it here.
Well, at this point, I mean,
This says alley and alley. Says bowling
Right.
alley, then what do you,
Well, I'm saying it should not be 3 spaces per alley, because an alley is the overall place that might have 1 lane, 20 lanes.
I thought lane per alley.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I looked it up.
I'd probably stay with the lead.
So this should
Yeah,
change to lane,
yeah, change to lane.
and that's just like a housekeeping thing.
Right, but do we have a provision somewhere where we can do just a housekeeping thing on their own, or does it have to go to the?
I just asked, so unfortunately, so part of my job after a town meeting is I have to incorporate the changes into the zoning bylaw, and I noticed the numbering of the sign bylaw was off. So of course, you know how we made changes at the very last minute, we took out some things. Well, those didn't make it to the warrant, change in the numbering, so the way it was voted on at warrant. So we have, the last bullet is number 12 in the zoning, and then in the warrant, first bullet is 15. So we went, there's no 13 and 14. So I asked Andy if we could fix that before we send it to the Attorney General, so then we won't have to do a housekeeping article later. So he said that he's gonna send an explanation letter with the information to the Attorney General's office and ask them to make that change, because clearly it's a Scrivener's error. So we'll see. We'll
You know
see
what
they
we'll do
allow
going
that.
forward for town meeting, I do see some towns write renumber accordingly, like part of the warrant article.
Yeah,
Says to just, so then we don't run into that.
yeah.
Well, even, you know, changing from alley to lane,
Yeah.
from theater hall to theater.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, stuff like that,
Right,
it's non-consequential,
right,
but it helps clarify and keep things kind of up with modern vernacular.
right.
Another thing that he said is that there's already money in the budget to recodify the entire code, of which the zoning bylaw is a part. So as part of the recodification, they address any of the silly, you know, spacing problems, you know, it's a comma instead of a semicolon. So he said that, of course, he's moving on, he's retiring. But that would be a responsibility of the next town clerk. So that's something that we could address then, so it does go before town meeting. But it's just as an entire book. So you're approving like the reformatting of the entire book. So if the Attorney General's office says no, then we can address it at that time.
Or we have
You're gonna have to redo all again.
a-
Double checking, I mean,
No.
Yeah.
That's all right, that's easy.
Okay,
All right, I took this one, because the second to the last one in industrial. Again, says restaurants and banks. And they have different requirements. So I was just gonna split those onto 2 separate lines in the chart here, even though they're gonna reference the same bylaw.
Where are you?
Second to the last under industrial.
To see, okay, industrial park.
The in an industrial park, it has a separate requirement for restaurants. Which is the same as the bars and not the same as the regular restaurants. And then also banks in the same bylaw.
Yeah, that makes sense, because in corporate, like if you have a corporate campus.
Mhm.
They may offer services for the employees, so that would be a bank, a daycare center, a restaurant. I've worked in places like
Yeah.
that. So the parking requirement isn't necessarily as arduous as it would be if it was a standalone. I think that's the intent.
Yeah, I think my question more is that one bylaw covers the restaurants in the industrial park and banks, even though the parking requirements for banks is different from the parking requirements for.
Oh, I see.
So I was just gonna separate those into two boxes, but it might be something the planning board might wanna separate it to two different bylaws. Since they're different things with different requirements, why they group together.
And it's not because they're, like Lori just said, they're in an industrial park.
Well, it would make sense, but if they were, like, say, this is the requirement for a restaurant, is one space for 3 seats plus employees. And then a bank, one is listed in the same one after a semicolon, and it's one space for 250 square feet. Those just don't seem to belong together.
Well, it's because those are common services included within an industrial.
Yeah, and maybe at one point, well, during the food hubs were added. So where we've got those separate, yeah, I just think they should be 3 separate things. I don't care if I put the same link, with the same bylaw, just for clarity. Because if we do sort this chart by, the common definition, common name of what it is, they should be separate. So you can look for B and find bank.
So you'd have industrial park services restaurant and industrial park services bank.
So probably what I would do is I'd put industrial park services over here, and then I'd put restaurants, 1 space per 3 seats plus 1 space.
Mhm.
And then I'd put bank. So I wouldn't list them over on this side, I'd only list them here. So that it's clear that this is the parking requirement for the restaurant and this is the parking requirement for the bank.
It's the only one in this whole chart that has that problem, so.
For, under the industrial park, like Laurie said, some of the bigger parks. Not that we're gonna go in anytime soon, I think, but, they offer a daycare center.
Yeah.
You wanna put a parking load in for that, based on the amount of employees. Because you don't have to worry so much about the customers, because the customers are already there.
Yeah,
But you wanna add something for. Daycare staff. Probably on a weekly basis. Because infant rooms, it's 1 staff per 2 babies. I think, and then that's more severe, and then. Gets easier after that, but if you've got like Goddard. School on Davis, they have probably 15 or 20 people.
oh wow, Yeah.
Two people in the infant room, and then you have 2 people in the other classrooms to do kids.
could add that, so then you'll have.
Yeah, but
bank,
that's a
restaurant, daycare.
bylaw thing, so.
Right,
Planning board has to do
yeah,
first. Or we could also, if it's the same parking requirements as where daycare is listed elsewhere,
mhm,
we could just add it to this section also in bylaw. Because that wouldn't require any planning board, so.
Daycare is currently 1 space per employee. And 1 space per 5 children. You could probably take out the 1 space per 5 children because. They're already there. You know what I'm saying?
So if it's different, planning board has to deal with it.
so it'd probably just be underneath this. Industrial park, just having daycare where you have restaurant, bank, daycare.
So under the next one, these are classified as industrial uses, not things that would be part of an industrial park. So I think we should eliminate the industrial park services. I don't think it's all of them are industrial.
Yeah, that's where I got confused, you can see, because it is listed. I mean, if I put it in black, it should be listed on the bylaw, and if I put it in red, and then it wasn't. And I did this 3 months ago, so it's,
But yeah, because the industrial park services was restaurant pay, so then you wouldn't need this.
so, okay.
Out, so the red comes out. Then we have Nano Brewery, Brew Pub, Microbrewery, Brewery, Distillery. It's a lot. Okay.
Yeah, almost done.
And then mixed use.
Yeah, and mixed use, so. At first, when I was doing this a couple months ago, I only had I found the two, well, it's never one, separated them. Mixed uses get the 25% reduction in parking requirements. Where anything over 5,000 feet.
But it's only if they can prove differing hours of operation, so it's not like a given.
Yeah. And I think the other two that I don't know if they were in there, did these bylaws get updated or something? Did I miss the other two? Because it says in the downtown business district, you don't get the bonus 25% for each additional 5,000 square feet. Which makes much more sense.
I think it's just because there aren't any uses that large.
Yeah, but now if we're putting out bids for the Fort West Main, that is that large. Downtown, so. Basically, that falls under the thing that even if they can prove that it is mixed hours and stuff like that, they still have to do 80% of what. The building.
Well, they can't because there's no space. So they're grandfathered. Right?
Change of ownership,
Change of ownership doesn't change.
change of purpose too, though.
The only time. The only thing is when you have a change of use, that's when it triggers it. Change of ownership has nothing to do with it.
Well, after 2 years, they lose their non-conforming.
But you still have a lot of allowed by right uses in that building.
Such as?
The dentist.
Yeah, well, he's grandfathered. in.
Right,
It's
he's
allowed by
going-
right.
Yeah, but so is mixed
Mixed
use,
uses.
grandfathered as mixed use, and then it doesn't matter, anything can go in.
Yeah, I don't know, we'd have to look into that. I wouldn't think not. You
I
would-
think that's vertical mixed use is by right, horizontal is special. I don't remember.
Yeah, so this is vertical, so there. That's 80%.
Well, I should think that if you had apartments in there on 2 and 3 and 4 floors, the amount of apartments would make a difference in what you needed for parking.
Right, but you take the total number of square footage and it's 1.5 spaces per apartment.
So if
So
you're
you-
30,
Uses,
So the maximum number, so I calculated this out as part of reviewing the RFP. The maximum number of units by our current mixed use bylaw is 5. So if there are 2 bedrooms, that would be 10 parking spaces for the residential uses. Unless it ended up being a 40B, in which case they throw the zoning in the trash. But
I can't see it being a
that's what
40.
you're looking at for maximum.
and that's using apartments on both floors.
So if it's a multifamily, believe it or not, the maximum number of units you can get in there is 2.
226,000 square foot building.
As crazy as that
Each
is.
apartment's gonna be the size of the White Cliffs.
Yeah. So really, they can't do that unless they do a 40B. It would have to be a mixed use. in order to maximize the number of units in there, which is fine, because I think that's kind of, you know, it'd be nice to have the storefronts used as storefronts instead of apartments. What do you think?
Well, is it possible, because of the thing's 4 stories or whatever, is it possible to have first floor retail and with the elevator, because now you're handicapped accessible, they have the second floor as business class use, and then the top 2 floors as residential?
I would think that you could do 2 floors, absolutely, of commercial uses, so. Right now, the second floor is set up like an office, so that could be an office, they've got conference, and it's really nice.
Hmm.
So you could do the first floor restaurant. Dentist space, and then second floor. Office or whatever, and then the remainder. And that would actually make sense, because the building, it doesn't have a huge footprint. So like 5 apartments, I think probably all you could fit on those 3 floors anyway.
Hmm.
Like the one upstairs on the roof, I don't even know if you could use that as an apartment, because it doesn't have real windows and only has skylights.
Yeah, the architects would have to get really creative on it.
Yeah. So if that was used for like storage, that could be storage for the people who live there, so then you have 2 floors of apartments.
Put your offices up on the top floor. You don't need emergency and escape rescue openings on an office situation.
Really?
But the poor people up there.
No, because
Oh, I
because you're awake.
Put the gym
And the
alarms again.
Okay, the reason why they want emergency and escape is at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're groggy. You know, they have to give you a second way to get out.
Okay. Well, there are the 2 stairwells and the
Elevator.
elevator, so.
So you, like I said, you don't necessarily have to put the businesses on the second floor. You
Yeah.
go to the 5th if you want. And for the residents, just have a passcode for the elevator, so people don't, mistakenly walk in somebody's home.
At hotels where they do that, like, and you walk out, I mean, you're the only one on that floor, cause that elevator only stops there.
Like our concepts.
Special.
Special elevator, only for you. All right.
So I was, I know that, selling the building with no parking and. It may qualify through loopholes and stuff like that, or letter of the law, but it's still gonna create a problem downtown.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the building ends up being. So I imagine there'd have to be some sort of negotiation for that municipal parking lot. So there'd have to be like a certain number of spaces allocated to that building in order for it to be successful. And then, my hope was that there would be some flexibility so that when the parking lot is not being used fully, others could use it.
Turns into a battle though, even if you look like Josephine and the apartments. They're always battling it, who's parking where.
I think you have to probably put up some signs, and then maybe there's a certain number of spaces that would be available for others.
This means that you put up signs and they took them down.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's tricky.
Well, they're
And
a
I-
tough spot because there's the municipal lot behind them, right? That has permanent shipping containers and stuff and bigger trucks that have been there for years. And then even where the memorial is, that parking lot, there's cars that park there that are there all the time. Where they live, but
It's just not enough parking
where
downtown.
if you, well, that's why I say if you did the RFP for this and you put apartments in it. A developer could build a 2-level parking garage pretty inexpensively with a municipal lot, but it's municipal lot, so there'd have to be all types of tops there. It's the. What do you call it, prevailing wage that makes a parking garage expensive, and 2 levels are cheap, 3 or 4, that gets expensive.
I think there's plenty of parking downtown. The problem is it's all privately owned.
Yeah,
So-
a lot of the perceived problem.
You know, like you look at, the Bank of America, I mean, you get that gigantic parking lot that's empty 99% of the time. And it's privately owned, so nobody feels like they can park there.
Yeah.
So there needs to be more flexibility for using the parking that is available. Whether it's, you know, like for West Main could even lease parking spaces from her. She's got plenty of parking and she's not using it, so maybe she.
Never not been
negotiate
in parking space downtown, I mean, it's always.
Even for the town common, we wanted to buy some of our spaces, but no,
Well,
so it's all up to them, you know.
very true, I mean, they can just say no, and then you still have a largely empty parking lot and a need for parking. It's-
What's the price on the Red Top gas station?
I don't know.
I know the mobile station isn't for sale. That's been tried.
I don't know, but nobody really wants to buy a gas
There is
station.
I would recommend the town buy a gas station.
You start digging.
What's that street downtown, Mill Street, next to the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
It's because there's a house for sale on that, it was a couple weeks ago.
And there'll be the old fire station.
Yeah.
In the lot across the street from that.
Yeah.
But like you said, it'd be too expensive for the municipality to build the parking garage.
Right.
You have the private would help.
But that would have to be some interesting negotiations to try to hold on the municipal parking lot.
I think the challenge is the downtown has to be more successful before anybody's gonna make that investment.
Yeah.
So,
And I have seen, because I'm on that mass planner's email, they said when you go for mixed use, have it be housing, because they all fail and they all end up being all housing. So that's a concern too, like, are we gonna say we want this vibrant downtown, but we're gonna give 2 levels of apartments? And then whoever buys it comes back and says, I can't fill those spaces, I want housing now, and then it becomes all housing.
now, right now, they're limited, just like I said, the zoning says you get 2. So if you wanna do mixed use, you get 5, so there's an incentive to do the mixed use. And those first floor storefronts are just gonna look wonky as happens.
I do think restaurants would make it because we can't get a reservation on the weekends.
Yeah, it's true, it is always,
It's bad, unless you wanna eat at 9 o'clock.
well, the other thing is everything's on the opposite side of town for me, so. Except for Blue Square, that's gonna be the same side of Main Street.
I couldn't believe one night we drove around and you just couldn't get in anywhere. I'm like, so,
Yeah, it's like that all the time, Saturdays and Fridays are bad, Sundays you can get it.
I think before COVID, people would go to Boston and stuff, and now everybody's like, I'm just, at least in my circle, maybe because I'm getting old, people like to stay close.
Well, I think the restaurants around town are better now.
So,
So
Alright.
on this one, just to try to make this clear, I think the planning board should actually do something with this first part about the 25% additional space. And it doesn't apply to these downtown. So that's good, but I don't know where that ever would apply, where you want to, you know, have a 25,000 square foot building that only requires 12 parking spaces.
what do you think, Lori?
When is that? Well, there are some places in town, like when you look at the strip malls, when you look at Northborough Crossing. I see those empty parking lots, I mean, granted, I'm there during the day, I'm not shopping in these places on the weekend, so I don't see what it looks like late at night, but. It looks like there's too much parking to me. Maybe it's full on Christmas shopping season, but the rest of the year, I suspect it's not full. So that leads me to believe that our retail parking requirements for those areas are too large. And that maybe we need to revisit those. Not in the downtown area, I think, you know, when you look at Northborough House of Pizza, you know, I'm there at lunchtime picking up my lunch and that parking lot can be full at times. But shopping centers in particular, I think we ask for too much.
I think Northbrook Crossing is packed on the weekends, because there's a line going down the street where I'm like, I'm going during the week.
Oh, really?
I don't know if they're all going to BJ's Gas or they're all going to Wegmans, but we don't even get in that line to go up that
What
hill.
about
Yeah.
the back driveway with, on fire pump house?
That's better. But,
I don't know, I just see the ones
Well-
going in there on the weekend, I'm like, oh wow,
Yeah.
Northbrook
Well,
does.
if you get a lot
Ton of
of commuters that are leaving Avalon, then that's when the parking gets bad.
So like if you're,
Right.
I know Wegmans
Right.
is super popular, but if you're looking on the other side, so you're looking at where Home Senses and the PetSmart
I think
and
those are crowded too,
are those
Beach is
parking
crowded.
spaces
on
crowded?
the weekends.
BJ's.
In the weekends, definitely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
quicker than the Hudson BJ's than to go to the
No, plan.
It's packed on the weekends.
Okay.
I mean,
And how many more malls that size are we gonna be able to build in town?
Well, is that even mixed juice or is that just?
Well, it's all commercial, but it's a mixture of like restaurant.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, down below, there's all of those medical spaces. So it is technically mixed use, it's just not mixed residential commercial use.
Yeah, so I see them packed on weekends, so I don't think we could take away from those.
No,
Right, that's why I'm saying, I'm trying to eliminate, I think that should be eliminated, where you get to reduce it by 25% for each 5,000 square feet. 'Cause
I agree.
That's what that chart. Is that chart still, yeah, so, you know. If it's a 30,000 square foot building, it only needs 18% of the parking spaces that it should require.
okay, so if you
I think-
reduce spaces by 25%, each additional 5,000 square feet. So you get 5,000 square feet extra, and you take 25%. What if it's 10,000 square feet?
Take another 25%, that's the way it's written, I don't agree with it, that's
That's
why,
like written,
yeah, that's the way it's written.
like Don's on roll.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that's something that should be revisited.
I agree with Mark. I
Wow.
think it should. I think what's happening with the parking is that a lot of people don't frequent places they can't get a spot. They go a couple of times, if the spot's full, they don't come back.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if you,
I mean,
yeah, I can't eliminate, I say my objection is just to what's written in the bylaw, not to anything that actually exists.
Cause
Yeah.
I have never gone to a place in Northborough where I haven't easily been able to find parking, like I'm even thinking of the tavern. And so, of course, that's a mixed use area.
Wow, I don't know when you go, but I'm gonna go with you. I've
Yeah,
gone to
well,
a
you
lot of places,
take back.
there's no
If I
space.
find the parking on the side or in the front, then I go in the back and I
Right.
easily find.
Yeah, you
parking.
usually can.
but I wonder if they didn't use this calculation, you know?
No, they didn't, I mean, and that's not in any other town's bylaws or anything like that, it just seems to be like.
We should look at it, because even if like, we don't see the problem, no one probably ever used it, but you get a smart developer and then he'll read it
Right.
and say, I can do this, and you can't say no.
It's not allowed downtown, but it's allowed elsewhere in towns to get the exception.
I'm just spitballing here, but my guess is that when they built the tavern in the square building, you know, the parking requirements is to the side and rear, they may have gotten some sort of special permission to park in the front. I'm just kind of envisioning that, because like you said, the front is always busy.
Yeah,
You almost never get a spot in the front. You have to go to the sides and if you go in the back, it's like no man's land. You know,
Right.
You need to bring a compass and a camel,
That's quite a walk.
you know? But my suspicion is that it was built that way because of the side and rear parking requirement.
Well, I thought we were, excuse me, I thought we were gonna start deciding to change that no parking in front. Isn't that one of the questions that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think that we'll be going way backwards if we do that, because it used to be allowed out front, which is why we have so many locations where you have the parking out front. Personally, I think that goes into the whole sprawl perception.
Yeah,
So your typical downtown area has buildings on the sidewalk edge and the parking, either if there is parking at all, It's on the side or in the rear. So that's the more, if you're talking about traditional New England character, that is the traditional New England character. The sprawl is what we currently have, because that's what was allowed before. And then the zoning rewrite of 2010 tried to reverse that. So
Well-
we're just seeing the fruits of, because there hasn't been a lot of development.
Yeah,
That
and
would-
down doesn't have the setbacks to allow any space for parking anyway, so.
Right, that's your downtown, that's your basic
Yeah.
downtown. But when you get away from that, like Hillside Hillside never worked. It was, oh no, this is what we're gonna do, and it's been nothing but an eyesore, and people have been very unhappy with it, including the owners. And I think when you get into a larger area away from the actual downtown, the smaller sections, that you have to consider that. You're putting parking in the back of building a new building. What would you do with Blue Square? Where would you put that building to have it in the back? You know, you have to,
The
Yeah, so-
dentist before us one time, they have their building and then they have the nice landscaping and then they have the parking to the side. Personally, I think that works. I would much rather see that configuration than the building setback and all of the parking in the front.
if there's
It's just
room,
trolley to me, but it's just not attractive.
well, again, that's a question for, personal taste.
Every
Like-
single building has the parking in the front to get outside of downtown.
Because that's the way the zoning was written
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah, I guess.
So then new development has the parking to the side, so the dentist is a new development, so
Right.
that's why it's.
The one next to Rockies is new, because that parking's inside the lot. But I didn't realize that was retail for a long time.
So yeah, with Rockies, how would you picture that with no parking in front? Like, I guess,
Well, I was talking about the place, the newer place next to Rockies, with the olive store. olive
Yeah.
place.
Other colonial type,
Yeah.
with the apartments above,
so they have.
Right, well, they didn't
Right.
have enough parking.
yeah,
But
they're
yeah.
on Route 20 and, King Street and, Route 20.
So their parking is not in front, but those buildings look good.
Right, because the buildings are turned sideways, so the parking is in between the buildings, but not in front of Main Street.
So you're looking at the building, when you drive by, you look at the building, you're not looking at all these cars parked. So it can, you can appreciate the architecture more than you would if it was just a cluttered mess of cars in front of a building that's in. Cars.
Well, I think it depends too on the product. If it's a restaurant, I don't think people are looking at the restaurant as a,
Yeah.
the
I'm saying-
architectural design.
Because if that building was set back and built into the hill, you'd have more parking and you could actually utilize a walkout on the second floor or something.
Right,
Yeah, their original designs looked better before
they absolutely did.
the town got a hold of it, so.
I think also the intent too is, you may not be walking on Route 20. But if you're walking in some areas of Route 20, you get the neighborhoods. So you're trying to encourage people to walk from their house to the business. So nobody wants to walk through a parking lot. Like even, when you go to CVS, do you really want to fight the traffic that's coming in to walk to the door of CVS? Or would it be better if the door of CVS was off of the sidewalk and then you could just walk into it and not worry about the traffic?
What happens when you want to widen a road and you put everything out on it so close? What happens to that?
Well, ideally, you're not widening the road.
Yeah.
But we've had to do that. We had to widen Church Street and,
Yeah,
that's something that 5 years down the road, we might not know, but 20, what are you gonna do?
Things of traffic that nobody ever wants to cross.
Yeah,
This takes 5 minutes.
I mean, the bicycle shop, it was a bicycle shop that then was the cabinetry down on East Main, or regular Main in the east. That's right on the road, literally. And they have 2 parking spaces. So that right on the road idea, it's gotta give a little bit, I mean, if you're looking for 5 foot wide, isn't it? 5 foot wide sidewalks, or is it a little bit bigger?
That was 10.
10,
Well,
yeah.
depends on where you are, I think in the downtown we say 8 feet.
8, okay, and then there's a
Or
buffer
it's the
before.
same.
It's like, so truly is enough of sidewalk.
Right?
Should
And
go to
people,
that.
you know, we have to give room for parking on the sidewalk, so we should be able to give even a wider parking, sidewalk, so that all the cars and trucks that want to park on them will have some room for people to walk around.
And the snowbank.
And a snowbank, because I'll tell you right now, the handicapped people that have to go downtown, we were walking down there yesterday with all the great music, and I hope somebody calls the DOT, because those things are dangerous. The pads that were on there are all ripped up. It's really dangerous.
Hmm.
So,
So maybe we're on a case by case basis.
yeah,
It's what's been happening, because we did say you have to be in the back, but then for a long time, they keep coming to ZBA and say, no, we want to be in the front.
Well, the thing is, it's, you've got difficult lot situations, you've got parking requirements. In a lot of cases, you actually have existing buildings, which have been there a long time. So everything is its own unique situation. This is a dream state. If you're starting on a giant piece of property and everything is brand spanking new, this is easy to follow. Once you get downtown with an existing building, and neighbors and parking and access and handicapped and sidewalks and everything else, you throw all that into the mix. It's a really weird looking cake. It's a jumble,
It is,
Yeah,
even the setbacks.
you throw all that into the mix and it's,
Now, that white building, 90 West Main, is that retail on the bottom?
Yes, 2 apartments, right?
2 or 3.
So are they gonna still be their home? They were gonna be.
I'm not sure,
Yeah,
because there's 3 or 4 projects in town. I
yeah,
know we're getting off track here, but there's 3 or 4 projects in town that seem to have stalled.
yeah.
And I can't do anything to hurry them up, but I'm getting phone calls and inquiries.
Hmm.
What's going on? What's the status? So I'm gonna send them messages saying, please provide an update, because I'm getting calls. 2 Durkin houses,
Yeah,
they are starting to ask for final inspections. So that's 2 of them, but they've got ways to go.
and those will be on affordable housing lists?
No,
The group
I thought
homes
they were.
ultimately.
they're recovery homes. So they're single family homes that treated like single family homes.
But I think it depends on who they're getting their license from. So some of the group homes go on the subsidized inventory.
Really?
Without the addresses, so they're confidential. So it shows up in the inventory as, just confidential or miscellaneous or something like that. But there are a number of
Because
them.
one of them is a 6-bedroom, the other one's an 8-bedroom.
So it'd be good as it gets close to the end to make sure we do what we need, if they could be included, to get them over the hump at the very end.
Yeah.
And not let it fall through.
Yeah.
But that white one, the big one, you said they are gonna have stuff on the first floor, because it's weird how they
The
built it.
first floor is designed for
There's
commercial,
still,
like a kitchen, cabinetry, general construction, showroom and offices.
It's surprising, because I thought there'd be windows, like there's no big windows there, I'm like,
Yeah, there's no windows.
not really, not like a showroom where you'd have a big window where you can see
I
it.
mean, the Bank of America, they put a giant front.
That's starting to look
You know,
very nice.
That's looking nice, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking they're gonna be coming at me. Blue Square, I'm doing the final Blue Square today.
Where is?
Everybody wants to go.
Yeah, where is that?
It's where the ice cream shop didn't go in.
Oh, well, that's a pizza place.
Yeah,
Everybody-
Everybody is dying for it
Everybody's
to open
dying,
it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What about
They
Ron
got
Lee?
place.
I don't know, I don't think so.
The consumer advocate said that, I thought.
Did they go for a
But,
liquor license? I don't think so.
I mean, it's takeout only, so
Takeout.
the laws.
Take it only, and they're actually gonna. I guess the Hopkinton location, which is wildly famous, is really good. So
Yeah.
this place is gonna be the takeout place for the full menu, and also the location where they make all the dough for both locations. So. But they literally gotta be inside. You can't tell what was there before. It's got it right out to the walls, the block.
Unless they replaced those too, because the old one had bullet holes in it.
Did you see bullet holes?
Yeah.
Use.
Wow.
The roof is
You
collapsing.
know,
Yeah, there's a ladder in the building.
Yeah. There's a rubber roof, looks like it's been laid back, like a blanket on.
That's been looking at it as long as I remember, yeah.
Oh my god,
All right, how about on the mixed use?
okay,
Since it's always a case by case basis, how about I just summarize that and
sure.
instead of listing bylaws that I think are wrong?
I gotta go along with that, Mark. I think that 25% just is
Yeah.
not gonna be helpful.
Another 25%, that's,
Right.
That will be a bylaw change.
yeah, the first two need to be a bylaw change, those are actually the same number.
Is there any way you can like summarize it and send it to me? and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
planning board
yeah,
can
and
talk
I
about
believe the other two are good, they're downtown, so,
it? Okay.
yeah, I need
So-
the wording there, but.
So, what's wrong with the way it currently exists as far as mixed use up to 5,000 square feet?
Nothing,
So
with-
it's a
nothing with
stop
up to
every
5,000 square feet, it's only above that I think is dangerous. And they're the same bylaw, so.
So up to 5,000 square feet, it's the sum of the uses. And then if it's over 5,000 square feet. You can get a 25% reduction for whatever's over, so.
Right, but it's, the only objection is that this. Each additional 5,000 square feet, so 25% of 25%, you know. Cause that approaches zero.
So you
Well,
did a
yeah.
chart on the second page on how it. goes
Okay,
down.
so it's my understanding, so let's pretend you've got up to 5,000. Let's pretend that the parking requirement is 20 spaces.
Yeah.
So then, if it's 10,000, so that would be another 20 spaces, but it's a 25% reduction of that, so instead of it being 40 spaces, it would be what's 25% of 20 is 5, right? So it would be 35 spaces.
Okay, that,
Is that a problem?
well, that's
Would
not how I
not
read
agree
it,
with that?
that's not how I read it, I don't know. It-
Is that how you read it?
The fact that we're having difficulty agreeing. Says there's a problem.
Yeah, it's
And it
confusing,
should be if, figure out what you wanna do and clarify the language.
yeah.
Because, you get a engineer who's sharp or squirrely. He could push this either way.
So the sentence is, the total amount of required parking may be reduced by 25% for each additional 5,000 square feet of floor area. So for 5,000 square feet, it's this. So the 20 spaces.
Mhm.
So for each additional 5,000, so if we have 10,000 square feet, then it would be 35 spaces.
Yeah.
But then another 5,000 square feet,
So then it would be another 25, so it'd be another 15 spaces, so instead of it being 120 spaces. It would be 35 plus 15, so it'd be 50 spaces.
Yes, we're reducing it. That's what Mark's been saying the whole time.
so, as you get
Doesn't make
towards
sense.
square feet, it comes down to like 3 spaces.
No.
But
because you
when
are
you're doing it-
always have the
Right,
20
you're doing
spaces.
like a step tax bracket, which
But I
maybe
think
how
that's
it
what
should
it
be.
says, that's what it says.
And maybe that's how it should be, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong.
See? For buildings of more than 5,000 square feet of gross
Mhm.
floor area for several distinct principal uses. Such as a small shopping center.
Mhm.
The total amount of required parking spaces may be reduced by 25% for each additional 5,000 square feet, so it's not. Saying that you can reduce the base number, which is the 5,000. So it's the 20 spaces plus an additional amount reduced by 25%, which would be 15 spaces. So 20 plus 15 is 35, and then it would be, once again, another 20 spaces reduced by 25%, which would be 15, so then it'd be 50.
So you don't read it that way though?
I don't read it that way. I could see how you could.
Right,
You know,
so do you see a way to simplify it,
well, I don't
so
think you would
everybody reads
ever,
it the same
would
way?
you ever want a building to have less than, you know, the 25% total on the totals number? Cause they're building a building and they're looking, say, you know, like in the chart, if it's a 20,000 square foot building. They're thinking of it as a 20,000 square foot building, not a 5,000 plus 5,000 plus 5,000 plus 5,000.
The only two buildings I can think of at the moment that have a parking issue is the Coleman House. Okay, that's always difficult with them. I mean, they're parking right up on the side of that. The other one is actually the brewery on Otis Street.
Yeah, Cold Tower.
Cold Harbor. I mean, they had to redo the parking because they were parking in the street, they were parking on the grass in the mud. And the other one that I've seen is, it's in the center, kind of in the center of town. It's 4 places. It's like a nail salon, hair salon. The building is kind of on its side to the street.
Oh, yeah, 109,
109, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, because it was, and they're full too, but I think they went for a reduction in parking.
oh, wow,
And that's something that is always, every time I go by there, they're parking, kind of along the driveway.
yeah,
So those are the 3 I can think of,
right,
but understanding, the shops going and stuff like that. If they're busy on the weekends, you gotta plan for worst case scenario.
Yeah, you don't go to Hudson, cause that's everywhere in Hudson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people still go,
Nice.
so.
Yeah, the trick is to get there at 6 when the bank parking lot opens up to the public.
I got locked out of Market Basket at Shrewsbury one time.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's huge.
it was the weekend of the Super Bowl, and there was a snowstorm coming. And
Yeah.
everybody on God's green earth was there.
Hmm.
I mean, it took me longer to find a place to park than it did for me to go in and out.
Interesting.
But, I worry about, and I understand what you're saying, like, vast expanses of pavement.
Yeah, like I think that's worse. Like having too much parking is worse than, I mean, wouldn't you rather see green space or, something pervious than just pavement that's just
Yeah.
always open?
No, I would, but, again, I go to the mall in Millbury on, God forbid, a weekend. Right, and it's the same thing, the upper level isn't so bad.
They're
But the
building a
bottom-
yard house on the
I saw that.
which is crazy because that side of the mall is always a challenge for parking. And then they ended up taking half of the parking spaces, maybe not half, maybe a third. And they put fencing all up, so now you can't park there, and they're building a yard house. So you're gonna need parking for the yard house, and then all of the existing uses, that side of the mall is like super successful, super busy. Whereas over by, like, they could have put it over by Target and Kohl's where they have too much parking. But nope, didn't do
They
that.
probably wanna be on the
Yeah,
busy
they're
side.
backups, though.
Yeah, it's
Good luck,
exciting.
good luck, there's a shipment truck in there.
but maybe that's why it shouldn't be reduced 25%
Well,
because,
but if the way she's interpreting, if it's graduated like that, all we need to do is say is graduated in Ingram, or something, work on the.
Work on the writing.
Yeah,
That's
and
kind of
then I can do a separate
just
chart,
clarify.
yeah,
Because, if you guys are seeing it differently, which is fine, I can see both points. And I can't fall on either side of the fence.
Yeah.
It might be worth clarifying it one way or the other.
they're both gonna come to you and say,
and it's, well, it's not that this situation is ever gonna exist in Norfolk anyway, so. I mean,
it could.
I mean, it does apply, it would apply to this building and to the old town hall.
And you still have areas of land in town that potentially this could have an effect. I mean,
Or like you said, that 109.
look at the quarry.
Yep.
I think also
Yeah.
the key is, it
All those-
depends on what the uses are. Like they have to demonstrate differing hours of operation in order to qualify for that
Does it say-
25%.
Right, it's right, it's case by case, so it has to go anyway, so.
But does
either
it
as simple
say
as possible.
demonstrate
Yeah,
it?
I'm pretty sure it does.
I don't
say that.
see that.
It is somewhere, or it is on other towns,
I
there
think it's by special permit.
is a
You
page,
have to apply for the review.
I did a page where mixed uses in other towns and what their verbiage is, and
Mhm.
it is somewhere.
We'll have to find it, just make sure, because that should be in here visible, because. If we can't see it, then it could go in front of the planning board, nobody sees it. Then we won't touch that, it has to be proven.
Yeah.
If we would
Well,
just
it's
follow
just
that.
great, you know, it says, you know, if non-overlapping peak hours. It is-
Yeah.
and-
So maybe
And
it's
then
in
it's
this,
Millbrae. Yeah, it's in Millbrae's.
and we can add in a line that makes it clear.
Yeah, and maybe look at the verbiage, Millbrae's is good, Tewksbury's good.
Oh, you already sent it to us?
Yeah, it's, I attached a couple, I think the last one I even had, it was entertaining to me, but you know, with Rock, I asked Rock how much it would cost to build 100 parking space parking garage. And it gave me a really detailed breakdown of it, and I don't know.
What's rock?
Rock is an AI,
Okay,
so it's like Chat GPT, only it's
Okay.
more, it's based more towards legal matters.
okay. Just as I breeze through this real quick, when you talk about mentioning building fees to $500.
Yeah, yeah.
It's $10 per thousand of the value of the project, so if you get $1 million project, it's a $10,000 permit.
Yeah, yeah, that's why when you use the AI for stuff like that,
Yeah.
it sounds very convincing and often is very wrong.
All right. All right, so did. Lisa, I was gonna say Lisa, but look at, I see an empty chair.
Well, she might not photograph.
I heard ya. I had to take care of the dog.
I was saying, do you have any other questions?
No,
Yep.
I like what Marcus said about that 25%, because it is concerning to me too, but beyond that, I'm good with everything.
Mark, you if you clean this up and send it back to us, but
Yep.
thank you for doing it.
And then it should only be 2 pages, I think, maybe.
And then we'll clean up this too, just to make sure it
Yeah,
makes sense.
well,
for
you'll
everybody.
have the bulk of different things and it's, yeah, minor clarifications and stuff like that.
Good thing is it exposes some stuff that, you know,
Yeah,
it's,
that's what I.
you know, last time it was majorly touched was 2009, which was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, 20 years ago, and, you know, a little bit of housework, a little bit of clarification. Not such a bad thing.
Especially like, cause we are kind of like at build out where people are rebuilding and it's like. People are gonna get more creative.
Fitting square pegs in a round hole.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but there is like a lot of like forestry land and stuff like that gets renewed every 10 years. So if what's the guy's name, what the guys ever take that off of forestry, then that's a lot of land. That's all the way from Wegmans all the way to the ski place.
Wow. So, let's see. We're all set with this. I have something really important I was gonna say. I guess it wasn't that important.
Well,
Oh, I was gonna ask, did we finish all the verbiage for the other guidelines? Like, I
I
know,
believe we did. The one thing that I was thinking about is, of course, doing a check to make sure that the changes that were approved at town meeting, this past town meeting, are incorporated into the rubric and to the design guidelines. So we'll do that when I get back to that.
yeah, and none of the numbers changed and
yeah, and then maybe we do one final read through, we'll all read through it. And then, you know, I know maybe the person that they hire will be able to do Adobe.
That's what I'm hoping, so it's advertised finally, so it should be up on our website. So it's a temporary 40-hour position. We'll see. and see what happens.
Okay.
Is there a timeline for Michelle to come back?
Her doctor's note is through October.
Okay. And then, so next on the agenda was design review guidelines, which is what we just did. And then downtown revitalization, there's gonna be another meeting, June 30th.
Yeah, 6:30 at the library.
To discuss the Blake Street project. It failed town meeting, but lawyers worked with the consultants to try to come up with a new plan.
It's a reduced price, so it's it takes off about $800,000 worth of cost. So that it could be constructed with grant money. Of course, we don't, there's no guarantee with the grant money. We should find out this summer, July for one of them, and then the other one is August, September timeframe. Should we get one grant but not the other, another possibility is to go to CPC and ask for money just for the parks improvements, so that would fall under the recreation open space category. And try and tackle it like a little bite at a time over multiple years, but should that be the strategy, then chances are we will not be going forward with a phase 2. Phase 2 won't happen until phase 1 happens, if ever.
I was just thinking, as we were talking about parking, for West Main Street is RFP. In the RFP, did it include the pocket park? Like the person who's buying for West Main Street, if it sells or we decide to sell it, does this park break off from it?
The way it's currently written, or when I reviewed it, it did not include.
Yeah,
The pocket park
was
for
like
them,
DPW land or something last time I looked at.
It's-
Water department or?
Yeah, I think it's DPW land, but so is all that parking, right? Was under
Well, the
DPW.
water department owns the parking area by deed.
So right now it's 3 separate parcels. So it's a parcel is the little park that the garden club maintains that's in front of the building. Then there's the parcel that incorporates for West Main, the building itself. And then there's a single parcel that includes the pocket park and the municipal parking.
Yeah, and where the line is a separate lot too, I think.
So I was just thinking, I mean, this for West Main Street, they have no parking practically.
Right, I think we have 1 handicap parking space.
Oh,
and that's it.
but that reminds me of a question I'm gonna ask.
Okay.
Because when you share, if they were to come up with an agreement with a neighbor to share parking, how close does that have to be? Is that?
500 feet.
Okay, that's what I used in my little diagram,
Yeah.
but I couldn't remember where I found that. Couldn't find it the second time.
My question was, cause if they got for West Main Street and that pocket park, they would just clear out the pocket park and make it parking.
Or even put a 2-level parking.
Cause I wouldn't
Well-
wanna like spend money fixing up that little pocket park and then say, we're gonna buy for West Main Street, but we want that pocket park and we're gonna wipe it out. We
Well,
need
it's like
parking."
the common kind of obsolete pocket park anyway, so.
No,
Okay.
you can see that as parking.
Yeah,
yeah.
That
Yeah,
kills
that's why-
the town beautification.
Yeah, try to make it good looking.
You put a nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah,
But it also is a nail in the coffin for West Main Street if they have no parking, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of nails down there.
well, you could do, with the line and stuff is, you can make that a little bit better. It's actually.
Well,
what
it was, that building was filled in the past using just the parking in the municipal parking lot, so that pocket park. So I saw pictures way back from the 70s. And that used to just be one gigantic green space
Yeah.
with no parking. And then, or maybe there was just a
It was
minimal
parking, it
one.
was a dirt lot. It was the parking for St. Rose's when they were, this
Okay.
was. I only remember, I don't remember going to the St. Rose's, but I remember it still being there.
So then it became smaller and smaller over time, so that the park still existed.
Yeah.
It used to be the passenger.
Yeah,
Train
it's the
station.
depot, yeah, which was a nice looking building. Train station, I like train station.
That'd be a cute little like,
Yeah, be a
Ice
great-
cream
great-
shop,
it'd be a
that
great
kind.
ice cream shop, but a lot of people have said that.
oh wow, I don't remember that.
Well, the dairy used to be right there too, with that restaurant. And they used to be, the old aerial view between the dog groomer and the restaurant, there used to be another fairly big building.
Right, because that was all lumber.
Yeah, Northwell Lumber.
I'm just, just trying to envision how it's all gonna work out, like it's,
Well, and that's the thing though, the other two properties, if they're not on board, it's hard to do much.
See, the
Which-
bigger
Well-
issues down there too is that you have with
Yeah.
the doggy den and the apartment complex across the street are battling over the parking there. And that's all private parking that the doggy den owns. They're not required to give the apartments their parking, because again, it's private.
Well, they do have parking behind, they just don't wanna use it, is my understanding. It's much more convenient for them
Yeah,
to
yeah.
park.
Well, I don't know that they have
Yeah,
enough behind,
it's
do they?
between the two buildings, this parking, on Blake, not across the street, but next to it, they have some parking.
Yeah, it's like 6 parking spaces, I thought.
It was used to be.
I think people have cars nowadays, like even though we want less parking. And more green space, I feel like more and more people have cars.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And if the weather's inclement, nobody's gonna wanna walk nicely around town when it's raining or snow. And the year we've had this year has been how much rain?
Well, I ask people who live behind Tavern on the Square and that go to Tavern on the Square, I would walk. I'm like, do you guys walk? Like, oh no, we try.
Well, there might be a fence.
That road goes right down there, right?
That's where Jonathan was.
But, I mean, we have to look at the reality. It's nice to have green space, to be sure, but you still have a railroad tracks there, no matter what you do to that area. The railroad tracks is not going away. They own space on either side as easements, and they never clean up their area. So, that's a big consideration. And we also already, I mean, when that pocket park was put in, you didn't have the common. That was there being used for a common area.
And it's still 5 acres of shit.
Yeah, but then there was something added, like, 20 years ago, so.
So I think that we have to look at the realities of, yeah, it'd be nice to be nice and green and everything else like that, but the trees are dying. Why are they dying? The land doesn't seem to do well in the grassy area.
I think it's also, from what first of all, there's no drainage. So there are puddles from the parking lot, the on-street parking go on to the open space area as well. And then, of course, you've got a number of kids that congregate in there on a regular basis after school. And they're just trampling the grass.
That's
And
true.
then there's the litter problem.
So what are you gonna do about that? Are you gonna have somebody
Yes.
down there maintaining it now? Cause
Yeah.
nobody's maintaining it.
It's enough. They've moved on different sides of the town hall over the year.
Yeah, well, that's the idea is, a big part is to fix the drainage problem.
I don't see that it's that huge. It's one spot on the whole road. And that spot was created because of heavy trucks parking on that space and bringing down the pavement. This was during COVID. So it's not, there's no other problem on the rest of the street or the parking. It's just that one section that's got this, that collects the water. So that only has to be repaired, and then you don't have to, not gonna repave everything. Especially in today's market with everything costing so much money, we have to look at the less expensive versions.
Could also be negotiated for those repairs as part of the Forest Main.
Well, good luck. Again, you can negotiate. Is there
Yeah.
17 people banging the door down to get to that building?
Well, that's what I say, maybe if somebody wants to make the offer to include that, they'd have an advantage, right?
Well, then
Just-
you'd have to sell, you'd have to sell 3 pieces of land, and you can't sell the front piece because that's got a preservation restriction on it.
Oh,
So
the
it has to
garden.
stay there. Well, not the pocket park, but in front of the building that faces Route 20.
the line.
Okay.
That everybody thinks had two heads that would plow.
And that fountain, does that work now?
It did, somebody got it working.
Yeah,
Talked about that, but it's since then, that'd be great to have it working. But again, if you're not gonna have somebody down there, it's the middle schoolers that go down to play there, and that's the problem. They don't have any place else to go, I guess.
Do they do any study as far as what's underneath the pavement, whether it's gravel or ledge or,
As far as the parking lot,
yeah, in that general area?
they did not do any core samples. So, I'm not
I remember the last time they dug up the tracks, I was surprised, that there was a lot of gravel.
Yeah.
Before they got to ledge, you know, it'd be nice if that was all gravel, with underground garage. But, a lot of money.
okay, all right, so does everybody wanna meet in July, or do you wanna skip till August? What are we gonna do? I know we wanna get this done,
Well, we get this done and then,
and it's not the 4th of July week, so we couldn't meet. Let's see, what's the date is.
yeah, then this gives you some planning board things that you can deal with. And we don't need to meet for that, and she's gonna check for some updates. Which we don't need to meet for. And these changes will just get emailed to you, so
Okay,
unless something comes up.
our next meeting is supposed to be July 10th.
Hmm.
Do you wanna,
I postpone that if you want to.
August, or do you wanna
Yeah.
come back and try to tie this up so we're done?
Yeah, it would be a short meeting, I think.
That way we can get all Mark's parking stuff done and in the guidelines, and then hopefully we'll be done with the guidelines and the checklist.
It would be nice to be done with it, because if I go another 3 months, what the hell I was thinking?
Right,
The
Right.
important thing though is to reflect what's going into the guidelines as the way it currently exists. So not how we wanna make it at the next town meeting.
That's true.
all right, and then just send me how you want it to go to the next town meeting, and then Lori and I can bring up to the planning board and see. Cause they were even talking about having a fall town meeting for some, they're trying to do that for zoning.
I
don't
think
know.
that's gonna happen. I think they're working on that.
I don't
in the
know.
fall. So I think it'd be a great idea, and keep it so that,
It's just housekeeping.
I would really like to work on the subdivision regs. I
Right.
think those are super important because we have so many common driveways coming.
Right,
And I got a heads up over another subdivision. It would be a tiny one. But we're meeting about that from vacation, so. That concerns me that our design, construction standards and design requirements in the subdivision regs are so outdated.
yep,
So if we could not work on zoning, so I could work on that.
well, we should, if it's a housekeeping list and we pull it together, it would be that.
Oh, my.
If it's something that I don't have to research, then that's good. If
Yeah.
it's like a major bylaw change, then I would ask that we put that off for you.
I didn't say anything major here.
No, the only, I think we put aside was just parking in front of buildings and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and that's more than we want to deal with.
Case by case right now. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's probably, subdivision stuff is probably important, and that doesn't affect us, right? That's just you.
Um,
well, that planning board problem.
Okay. Right. So does anybody else have anything? I don't think we got minutes, right?
No,
None attached.
I didn't get them.
No, we're attached.
All right, we'll do that next month.
I wanted to just ask a couple questions. We're talking about downtown revitalization and such. The building that we referred to as Duke's, which is just down from those two white buildings.
Yep.
It looks like the roof caved in.
I'll take a ride by.
All right, they had a ladder up to it, but is that at a point that it,
There and the covering was peeled back, I think they were looking at it.
Is that a service station next to the two white houses?
yeah, I'm wondering if, I mean, isn't that at a point where it should be in a condemned site?
It's amazing, it's still.
Every time I
there.
drive by, I'm like,
It's,
in that
No.
building. Looks
Alright.
like a coming closer down.
I can take a look at it and, you know, I'll talk to Duke and if necessary, I can issue him an order to make it
Yeah,
safer to take it down.
do even on that?
Yeah. he still works there. I mean, it's just scary when you drive by and you look inside. You know, God forbid that comes down on someone. But I noticed that the other day.
It's holding the roof up.
Yeah, Jax. And then the other question I have, we've had a couple of new businesses come in. And they're starting to take over the same signage that was there. And my concern about the Brittany's location, I don't know what the address is, so I have to use the name, I guess the business was purchased and it's Diamond something. So they took the old Brittany sign and they did what they wanted to with their artwork. They don't have any address on the sign.
We'll be working with them. I'm aware of it.
Okay, because I would think that, I mean, they've got 3 different signs going in there, and I thought we were supposed to have like a marquee that would then have the specific businesses. Are we gonna be able to get that over there?
I'm not sure. There are 2 pre-existing freestanding signs on the property already.
Hmm,
It might actually be 3, I'm not sure, but.
yeah, I think there's 3. But didn't you say when things changed, that changed the playing field, that then it was time to redo the signage?
No. If it's a different text on an existing sign, then it needs a sign permit.
Right,
Okay. Follow all the regular rules that are currently in place. We don't have the ability to order them to take down signs and, you know, put them back up, because those signs that are currently there, in terms of the freestanding ones, are pre-existing non-conforming. And if they're changing the text, they just need a sign from it. So I'm gonna have to give that a deep dive, but I am aware of it. The person who took over Brittany's is the person who owns Venus Pizzeria.
I did hear that, yeah. Well,
He's gonna do breakfast.
So the structure doesn't come down? Just the.
I'm gonna have to look into it because the
Yeah.
structure is not part of the sign.
there's 2 for Brittany's on the lot.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
That's what I need. Conference call on this Instagram.
Okay.
But they've already pulled a permit though, right, Bob?
No,
For Diamond?
no,
Just the diamond sign.
that's why I'm gonna have to deal with it, and I will.
You're gonna be right next door in a couple minutes.
So right now I got a fire station to deal with. I have,
Whoop.
in fact, of the lost is license in town with 5 major projects going on.
Oh, no.
That took a whole week. And I'm in the process of readjusting building permit fees. And we have a short week this week, so those are my 3 priorities right now.
Their jack came right over at the fire station
Mhm.
where there was no ledge. We brought that up a million times. Oh, there's no ledge over there.
Really? This is New England, bet on it.
Yeah.
That's what they kept saying, design review, Mark and Lisa, and the designers, the architects, nope, no ledge there.
Well, when you go down 10 feet, don't hit ledge. That's one thing. You're going to hit 20 feet and you hit it. I mean, it's a hill, come on.
It's a hill that a river flows around. The
Right.
river would have gone through it, had it, but. Yeah, so-
All right, well,
Yeah,
All right,
we'll get on it. You guys all set?
yeah,
You have to do a motion with.
no, do you have to do, yeah, we must, I do that for planning board. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
All right, roll call vote, Lisa
Mark
Maselli.
seconded.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. All right, Lisa Maselli,
Aye.
Yes.
Mark, yeah, and I'm an I. All right, we're adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aye.